Hey friends. This morning, two insights emerged, not really related. I may discover a connection as I'm kind of recounting them. But the first one, I'm going to take the second one first, but something that showed up during meditation this morning. I was doing my thing, my usual thing of sitting in meditation and observing my mind, creating these fantasies of excellence. In this case, it was excellence, or having conversations in which I'm indisputably right. This morning was a little bit of both. A variety, a buffet of Robin's internal fixations. And there was something that happened physically, which then very quickly translated into a deeper insight than just on the physical level. But it's that moment of observation is the key, right? If we're in a mental pattern, the moment that we observe the pattern, the moment that we become aware of being the observer of the pattern, which we always are. We are never the pattern. We just think that we're the pattern. So there's a moment of recognition, and as long as we think that we're the pattern, we kind of might as well be. We're not, but we might as well be because for all intents and purposes, we're just going to identify as the pattern. So there's that moment where we realize, no, I'm watching something. I'm watching my mind do something. And then in that moment, I also become aware of the identification with it. I become aware of the fact that I think this is about me, Robin, and it is about me, Robin, but it's not about fundamental essence of self, me. It's just about the personality, which, as I've kind of been digesting and going into on my last couple of posts, our personality is just a figment. It's leftover memory, as Sadhguru would say. It's not even a real thing. So anyway, there's a moment in there where I kind of identify the pattern, notice that I'm observing the pattern, and then all of a sudden, it's like a softness creeps in, and this is what happened physically this morning. It's like I was sitting, kind of running the tape, and then I love this image from Chogyam Trungpa. He talks about the echo of our awareness. Meditation is like holding the world within our awareness, and every once in a while, our own awareness echoes something back to us. It echoes something it's like it gives us a reflection of reality. I just find that such a beautiful image because that's very close to the sensation that I sometimes have in that moment of clarity when I'm going from being up against the pattern and it's just like on my face. I can't see it because I'm looking out through it, and then I pull it off, and it's like, but the sensation in terms of awareness is like, it's like a din, it's like an echo. So that moment happened, and the thing that was really key for me was, in that moment, a softness comes in, and I immediately kind of saw that all of my being right, all of my being excellent. I'm spinning these fantasies in my mind about how great I am, or circumstances where I'm doing something remarkable and being recognized for it. I mean, it's amazing what my mind will do. If I just sit and watch it, it's kind of incredible. And I don't know that I'm fully unique in that. You don't all have to share it once if you don't want to, but certainly something I'm very capable of observing within myself is this tendency to aggrandize myself internally, strictly for my own viewing pleasure. It's not like this is, it's not like I'm broadcasting this, although of course I am. That's the other thing we notice when we kind of become aware of this stuff, is that the stuff that we think is subconscious is actually being blasted through loudspeakers to everyone else. So a lot of times, you tell somebody you had this deep insight about yourself and they're like, oh yeah, it's kind of obvious. And you're like, oh, wow, I'm that transparent? Anyway, moving past that, the insight that I keep not getting to was that rightness and that excellence, that image of myself is the hardness in my body and in my mind. It's what it is, that hardness. And so as soon as I see it, as soon as I observe it, as soon as I disidentify from it, I become soft and I become supple and resilient and not fixated, not afraid. And it's, and it immediately rung a bell with how it feels to play piano from that place of, I have to be excellent. Forget it. There's no way to play piano from that place. I mean, I'm sure people do. I'm sure people overcome that, but I think for me anyway, it's debilitating, and it's not what I would, what I would be able to say from that place is also not what I truly want to say. It's only what that kind of like fixated part of my mind wants to say. But there's a hardness, there's like a brittleness. It's almost like the image that came to me was like an eggshell. That ego, that I want to be right, I want to be excellent, I want to be this, I want to be that. It's like an eggshell. It's hard, it's rigid, immovable, not pliable, not flexible, and incredibly fragile and brittle. And so it's called, and a lot of times what I'll have in my body as I get to that moment in meditation, as I sort of like step off the train of my mind that's, spinning the story, is it's like, it'll be like an out breath, and I'll feel, it's almost like suddenly I can feel my body. I can feel portions of my body that I wasn't feeling. Truly, like as if I had 1,000 little hands inside my body holding on for dear life, and they all let go. And that's like, oh, now I can feel myself. I actually, oh yeah, okay. Oh yeah, I'm okay. I'm not brittle and puffed up and fragile. I don't have to sit like this. Just, I realize these imperatives, physical imperatives, where as soon as I kind of observe them and breathe into them or let them go, my body lets go, and I can, it's almost like I can see what my body is saying. It's like my body is speaking a language of pride, of competition, of proving myself, whatever it is, it's a big, those and many more. But so that was the first thing that came to me today was it's like I was able to connect more explicitly the hardness that I feel and the resulting fragility and kind of brittleness And then the softness, the letting go of that and moving into a different space in my awareness. And I think, over the last several days, I've felt like I've identified that any number of times. In some ways, what I was saying either yesterday or the day before, or whenever it was, holding my practices slightly more gently is one of the very beneficial results of that, because if our practice becomes our identity, in other words, our practice is no longer simply, it's no longer a fully conscious action. It's a partially habitual action. I mean, again, I'm kind of, I'm deconstructing this as I articulate it, but because on some level we need our practices to be habitual, and we are building habits. That's what, especially when you're talking about something on piano or even a qigong practice or a meditation practice, you're building a habit. So we are building something that's routine, and that in some ways becomes automatic. But that kind of automaticness is, when that becomes a barrier, that's, I guess, when we have to kind of look again. Like for me, my practices can not saying that I try to avoid this, obviously, but they can become another form of identity, another form of hardness, so that you take away my time when I was supposed to practice something or do a certain thing, and all of a sudden I'm stressed out, and it's like, well, hold on, isn't the crux of the practice to let go? Isn't the crux of everything to let go? And it reminded me, the kind of the next thing that came through this morning was that place of hardness, that place of being right, excellent, whatever the projection is the opposite of the space that Madeline is inviting me into when she says, reflect on something sad before practicing, or reflect on something sad before meditating. She's inviting me, she's basically saying, go to that place in yourself that's connected with mortality. It's connected with softness. There's almost like in order to be in that hard place, that place of I'm right. In order to think that being right is important, we have to think we're immortal. That if you analyze that from a strictly intellectual point of view, that won't make any sense on the intellectual level. Right? It's not clear that thinking that it's important to be right means thinking that we're immortal. But if we can see that need to be right, or that need to be excellent, or whatever it is, that's an identification with the part of ourself. Ironically, it's the part of ourself that is already kind of dead. It's the part of ourselves that's the composite of memories. It's the ego stuff. It's the karma. It's the programmed part of us. It's the limited part of us. And it's trying to exalt that part of us into immortality. It's kind of like fighting a dying battle. The ego's fighting a dying battle. So it wants to be right at all costs. It wants to be beautiful. It wants to be excellent. It wants to be the best. It wants to be whatever attributes or skills or perceptions that it has decided are the thing. But it presumes its own it's like it's presuming its own immortality rather than identifying with a different part of ourselves and coming to a place where you can let go of all of that. None of it has to stick. None of it is foundational. None of it needs to be defended. And we can simply make choices about what we're gonna believe, what we're gonna think. It's for the sensation for me is always that there's a gentleness that creeps in. I can be gentle with myself. I can be gentle with others. As soon as I feel that edge, that desire to like cut and say you're wrong or I'm right, or even just very subtly on a subtle level kind of judging someone else, when that happens, that's when I know, okay, I'm identified with something, with some sort of limited aspect of myself. I have to be. I couldn't be doing this. I couldn't be exercising this particular psychic maneuver of like doing intellectual jujitsu on someone in my mind unless I were identified with the part of myself that's not eternal and that doesn't have access to that, and that therefore thinks that there is a life for it to defend, that thinks that there's a life it could lose, or that there's anything that must be defended. So yeah, it was powerful this morning when that all kind of showed up. It really connected me to that heart space that I talked about a moment ago with what Madeline is inviting me into, or what that phrase just kind of summarizes. That space for me: reflect on something sad before you meditate. Whew. Now I'm using my limited time in this life to be available to life. What else is there? And I think this is why a couple weeks ago maybe I mentioned Sadhguru has this beautiful quote, which is, you should construct your psychological and emotional framework within the context of mortality, within the context of your own mortality. I think that's what he's saying. He's saying when we're there, we're automatically connected. We're going to be connected to, like, if we're recognizing our own mortality, we're going to be inclined to use our time for the most important things. We're going to be disinclined to defend ourselves in ways that are totally irrelevant and ultimately totally illusory. We're unlikely to spend our time proving anything about ourselves. What is there to prove when we're conscious of the fact that we're only here for a limited time? And that there's infinite possibility. Who has time to fight? Who has time to go to war? But there I go judging again. So yeah. Thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate you. I love you. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you tomorrow.